Page 89. While every relationship is different, some of the fundamentals that make for a healthy, productive relationship are constant. Sponsorship depends upon trust, and as sponsors, we must be able to keep the confidences of the people we sponsor. This may present challenges if, for example, we are confronted by family members or significant others of those we sponsor. If we are sponsoring a minor, we may need to forge a relationship of some kind with his or her parents. In any circumstances, we need to be vigilant upholding our responsibilities to those we sponsor. Our sponsee's trust is a precious gift, and we need to honor it. Quote, one of the most difficult aspects of sponsoring someone under 18 is that you must also sometimes build a relationship with the sponsee's parent or guardian. When I sponsored a newly clean 15-year-old, I sometimes had to call his mom and explain things to her myself, like the fact that I had told my sponsee to go to a meeting every day. And of course, I had to talk to my sponsee all the time about my conversations with his mother, making sure he always felt comfortable and respected. It took a long time, but she grew to trust me because I took the time to explain the process of recovery to her. Today, my 19-year-old, 5-year clean sponsee has an amazing relationship with his mom. She learned that she could just be his mom and didn't have to be involved in his sponsorship relationship. On the holidays, they invited me over, and all she could do was thank me for giving her son back to her. I told her not to thank me, but to thank Narcotics Anonymous. Close quote. Another quote. At one point, I sponsored a woman who was dating a relative of mine. As time passed and their relationship became more serious, it became more and more difficult for me to be both her near relative and her sponsor. I had information I really didn't want to have coming from my relative and from her. I'd like to say that I realized this and dealt with it maturely, but instead I struggled until the whole thing blew up in a big fight and we each broke the other's confidences. After things cooled down, we talked about what happened. We both agreed that she would be better off with a different sponsor. Today we are on friendly terms, and I have learned my lesson and no longer sponsor people who are in the middle of my life that way. Close quote. When we are asked to be a sponsor, page 91, we sometimes get overly zealous in our efforts to present our knowledge of the program, especially if several members ask us to be their sponsor. The more people look up to us, the easier it is for us to feel self-important. As hard as we may try to resist becoming overconfident and egotistical, we might find ourselves falling into the super sponsor trap, thinking that we know everything and are infallible. Quote, you never know who's going to make it in this fellowship. I am in no position to discount anyone or anything said at a meeting, since that person or thing said just might be what I need at a future time. Close quote. Another quote. As a sponsor with a lot of clean time, I've realized that since I've never attended an NA graduation party, there must still be more for me to learn. Close quote. Another quote. I got really judgmental of my sponsees who have 9 or 10 years clean and didn't call me as much anymore. But my sponsor said, don't think you're so important. Close quote. Staying aware of our limitations and continuing to take a personal inventory can avert our stumbling into this better-than mindset. Sponsorship allows us to grow through experiencing our limitations. By admitting those limitations and being honest with our sponsees, we strengthen the bond between us. Quote, the deal here is to share experience, strength, and hope. What exactly does this mean? It means not talking about what I would do if I were in that situation, but rather talking about what I did do in a similar situation. If I don't have any experience, I believe it's okay to suggest someone who has. This does not mean that I am a bad sponsor. It means that I am a good sponsor who is not just winging my way through the relationship. Close quote. Page 92. Another quote. I remember having 21 years clean and wanting to just die. I was in so much emotional pain, but I was afraid to share how I was feeling at my home group meeting. I had the most time in my area, and several of my sponsees were also home group members. I had heard the saying, you can't save your ass and your face at the same time. I finally set my ego aside and shared how I was really feeling. I knew my sponsees were going to be embarrassed and then abandon me as their sponsor. Instead, I picked up 2 additional sponsees who wanted what I had. Go figure. Close quote. There will be times when our own experience may not be applicable to a sponsee, or he or she is struggling with something beyond our knowledge. We may have to say, I don't know, or refer our sponsees to others who can help them when we cannot. We do not want to offer guidance on those things in which we do not have experience. We, too, can go to others for advice on how to handle things, providing our sponsees' anonymity and confidentiality will be protected. Offering suggestions to sponsees as to where they might find help does not mean we are a failure as a sponsor. It actually means the opposite. While we may not always know what is best for our sponsees, we can offer them a shoulder to lean on and assure them that they are not alone. Quote, by only sharing my experience, I am on firm ground. I know that I am being honest, and if my sponsee does what I did, then he can stay clean. If I give advice, especially in areas where I have no experience, I'm on shaky ground. If my sponsee follows my advice and ends up using or experiencing adverse consequences, I would be responsible. I leave the advice to the professionals who know how to deal with those consequences. Close quote. Page 93. Another quote. When I say yes to someone who asks me to be a sponsor, I'm making a commitment to another person and to myself as well as to recovery in general. I see my job as not giving advice but sharing my experience, strength, and hope at a more intimate level of understanding. This begins with listening. Close quote. If we are not sure how to approach a question or request from our sponsee, we can go to our own sponsor. We are not alone in our decision-making processes. Here, the chain of recovery can be seen in one of its purest forms, one addict helping another, helping another. In most cases, many of us find that our sponsor provides just the right answer. One of our biggest challenges as a sponsor may be the desire to protect our sponsees from sometimes overwhelming experiences of life. We should be aware that our role as a sponsor is not to shield our sponsees from life, but to help them use the principles of the program to live life to the fullest. Quote, I tell my sponsees that growth can be painful and feel scary and lonely at times. It's like taking the training wheels off of your bicycle. I can't always run alongside the bike to keep you from falling. All I can do is be there to help you back up and push you to try again until you learn how to ride. Those scrapes and bruises will pay high dividends in the future. Quote, for me, being a good sponsor means, perhaps, that my sponsee will learn as much from his mistakes as from his sponsor. Close quote. Page 94. For most of us, sponsorship offers many advantages and blessings. It is a way to stay connected to NA, to be of service, and to deepen intimacy. We have the opportunity to share in the awakening of the Spirit in another member. Sponsorship can develop into a healthy and respectful relationship and often a profound friendship. Each relationship is special in its own way. We may feel closer to some people we sponsor than others, but we try to give the best of ourselves in each relationship and to ensure that we are equally available and welcoming to everyone we sponsor. Quote, many of the relationships I have entered into as a sponsor have provided me with dear friends. Close quote. Another quote, I don't get too close to any of my sponsees for a few reasons that I find important. I work with them on recovery only, not as best friends, job counselor, money lender, marriage counselor, etc. It's important that they know my only interest is in their recovery. This gives them the ability to be honest with me and not color anything for fear that I might judge or disapprove of them. Also, believing that my only interest is their recovery gives them the ability to hear what I have to say about certain subjects. Close quote. Another quote, I have many types of relationships with the people I sponsor. Some are best friends, some are more business-like, and others are emotionally remote. I try not to prejudge what type of relationship I should have with a sponsee, allowing the relationship to change and grow naturally. Close quote. Page 95. While our journey in sponsorship will vary between individual members and communities worldwide, we all are striving to reach the same destination in recovery. Through working the steps and traditions with our sponsees, we learn how to be consistent and willing and how to practice spiritual principles. Quote, I work with my sponsees in a step study group as well as one-on-one. We use the new step working guide, the Narcotics Anonymous step working guides, along with the basic text, and it works how and why. Most of the guys I sponsor have multiple years clean, and a few are new to the program. I am also a stickler about the traditions and strongly encourage adherence to the 12th tradition. Close quote. Another quote. Before I work a step with women I sponsor, I pray and invite God into the experience. We need to remember that God is the ultimate power. I ask for wisdom, knowledge, and the courage to see the truth and meaning of the step so that more healing can take place. After we work the step, we pray and thank God for another opportunity to heal by applying the principles. It's amazing that we can all go so far with just the 12 steps. Close quote. Page 95. Quote, or another quote. The assignments I give my sponsees depend on their clean time. I tell all of the newcomer guys, call me every day and leave a message if I'm not home. If you lie to me, I can't help you, so please don't. I'm not a counselor, moneylender, marriage counselor, or someone who's going to enable you. If you want to stay clean, I can help. But if you're not going to put forth any effort, then I won't do you any good. Go to 90 meetings in 90 days and we'll start working step 1 together. If you feel like getting high, call me before you pick up. I give different direction to sponsees with more clean time, but despite the different assignments, I treat all of my sponsees with the same respect and love. When they call, it's for both of us to get to know each other and bond. Close quote. Another quote, page 96. Some of my sponsees meet with other women of similar clean time to work through the step working guides together. They find doing that is motivating, and they say it helps them build stronger relationships. As they complete a step, they still choose to share that step with me. Close quote. Sponsorship opens the door into our own hearts, and we can learn not to take ourselves too seriously. We share the realities of life with our sponsee: joy and sorrow, happiness and depression, courage and fear, truth and deception, birth and death. Through the simplicity of the Narcotics Anonymous program, it is possible for us to share a life of freedom beyond our wildest dreams. End of chapter 3.